Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of the agenda. Any additions or corrections?
No, motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes from last week's meeting.
I would move to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment period. Would anybody like to address the board this morning?
Before we get going, I do have one thing that I will mention. Fred and I were at the Caledonia, the District 3 forum the other night, their debate, and it was brought up, and I think it should be clarified. It was brought up by an individual that said they thought that it was a distraction that the commissioners are on their computers and on their phone during the meetings. Clearly, this is an issue where when you don't know what somebody does, you assume nothing. And so, to clarify for anybody out watching, we have the Microsoft Surfaces that have all of our papers and our packets on them. So when somebody comes up to speak, oftentimes we're following along with different stuff. I'll give you an example. Like today, Brian's coming up for some purchases. We have all of the stuff for all of his purchases on the computer if we don't have hard copies of it. I don't have a computer. I do, but I don't bring it. One of the reasons was when this was first introduced to buy Microsoft Surfaces, I voted against it because my phone does everything that the Surface would do. So I had made the point that, you know, so far to date, I think we spent almost $10,000 on Surfaces for the commissioners. And so I didn't want to bring the Surface because I have my phone. So we're not texting, we're not surfing the web, we're not doing anything like that. We're following along on articles and papers. So Fred and I talked about it, and Fred and I both decided that's something that needed to be clarified because obviously people don't understand what's going on, that we have computers so we can look things up, have documents, cross-reference stuff. I use my phone instead of the Surfaces, but that's what we're doing. So people can put it to rest. We're not surfing the web and playing solitaire during a meeting. So anyway, just to clarify. Thank you.
You're welcome. I can't get it on my phone, so I do need my Surface.
Oh, exactly, yeah, and it's just a
Whatever
personal
works for you,
preference,
but that's
whatever
what
works.
we are doing. Exactly. Anybody else wish to make a public comment this morning? Okay, we'll move forward then. Brian.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
I have three items I'm recommending to approve today. The first item is our Spring Grove Highway Department shop. The floor is always wet in there. It's always humid. We'd like to get the humidity level down in there. In the summer months, we're washing off our equipment, bringing them back inside. They're dripping and leaving moisture on the floor with the humidity outside as well. During the winter months, every time after we get done plowing snow, there's snow and ice caked onto the truck that's going to be melting off throughout that night. We just have a constant moisture issue in that building. We're recommending, we've talked to some HVAC people and stuff, and recommending to buy a commercial level dehumidifier for in that shop.
I couldn't agree more. I've got one in my shop for that same purpose. Tools, equipment lasts a lot longer if you can keep the humidity out. And it is amazing. Mine runs 24 hours a day, and we pull, I bet, 10, 15 gallons out of just a small residential one in my shop. So I do believe it's something that we need to have just for keeping up on the maintenance of the tools, the shop itself, everything. Like Brian said, it's kind of a, we should have. So
You have any budget it can come out of, or how are we?
Yeah, we have a line item within our budget for shop repairs. So this year we haven't had any garage doors that we've replaced. Yeah, we haven't had garage door openers, some of the stuff that we've had some issues, and we haven't had those this year, so we do have budget within that line item.
I will motion to approve the purchase of a humidifier, or dehumidifier, sorry. The exact opposite of what we're going for.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. The next item is, we do a lot of culvert replacement in this county. Most counties do and stuff, but whenever we do a replacement of a small culvert, 18-inch, 24-inch, even the 30-inch, it's difficult to really know the true condition of the culvert when you're sitting at one end of the culvert, laying down on the ground, shining flashlight through, trying to find the condition. Often what you see is at the end of the culvert might look good or might look bad, and you get inside the pipe and it's a totally different shape. So a couple years ago, an employee over at MnDOT made a cheap version of what used to be a $60,000 to $150,000 culvert inspection tool. Essentially a small remote control car, put a camera on it, some lights, drive through culvert and look at it. You tie a cable to it so if it gets stuck you can get it pulled back out. This is an example that MnDOT posted on their website. A culvert that looked really good from the ends. You get into the pipe and then you find out all of a sudden the pipe has a separation at a joint. The end changes, you can see material inside. This is a pipe that if you look at it from the end, you're going to leave it in place, and then you repave the road, and a few years later, you're out there digging up the pavement, and you're spending, probably $30,000 to replace a pipe that, a pavement patch that could have been done up front at a lower cost. So, so I'm recommending that we purchase the parts to make our own unit. MnDOT kind of put together a plan of what it takes to do this. Estimated cost of about $1,200 plus the cost of a tablet, so about $1,500 total. You might be able to replace a culvert and save a $15,000 pavement patch, or you might leave a culvert in place and save yourself, $15,000 to $30,000 up front to find out that it's just the end that's bad, that everything in the middle is good. So, so I'd like to recommend this purchase. This, what they're calling the Hive inspection vehicle, has won numerous awards already at both the state and national level and stuff for the innovation, the cost, and the savings it's caused the state. Other counties have been doing this, same thing, buying this vehicle, and I think it'd be really good for us to have.
That's a question I have. Brian, do you know if Fillmore or Winona have that?
Fillmore is in the process of getting one set up. It has not been out onto a site yet. I had a meeting last week with the Fillmore County engineer, and I was talking to him about the possibility of sharing and stuff, and the time to go get it, bring it back, use it, bouncing it back and forth, is that worthwhile? And so Winona, I don't know about Winona.
Okay. I guess, it's been brought up, I know when I was commissioner before it was brought up, so it's been brought up on a number of occasions about sharing things, and it never seems to get done. And, I mean, we certainly aren't going to be inspecting culverts daily or weekly. It's going to be a very rather occasional thing. And I've just seen that, and I've noticed here there's potential for image distortion, cumbersome data storage. Digital video data can be large. Maintaining an archive of historic inspection videos will require significant server space. Operator experience. A trained operator is required to conduct a CCTV camera inspection. The operator needs to be familiar with driving the crawler, identifying defects, and best practice for capturing a good video image. I'd like to pause on this, and with Fred being gone, I spoke with him last night. He had some questions, so I would recommend waiting on it.
Let me say this, because I come from a different viewpoint of this. Having looked at buying this exact RC car for myself and my son to play with, I've got a lot of friends that have that same platform. My take is this. When I first read what this was, I was thinking it was going to be some big $10,000 unit that is custom, whatever. When I saw this, I looked at it and went, well, that's kind of chintzy, but at the same rate, I was kind of impressed in the fact that all these parts are over-the-counter parts that don't cost much to fix if something broke. As far as operating it, I literally have a friend that has a 6-year-old son that drives this car around like a pro. So I'm not concerned about that. In the data storage for that, a lot of the stuff can be stored like what I do, like on our GoPro. We do that all the time, and it's just on a small SD card. And depending on how many hours, we get 4.5 hours of HD video on less than 32 gigs. So, I mean, it would take a lot. My only other thing that I see with this too is, and we'll bring it up with the drone thing because it's kind of the wave of the future where things are going, but I see it, I see the reason why. Because you're right, for the culverts, how do you see the middle, especially on a 30, 40-foot culvert? How do you ever get to the middle? But the other thing is, you know, we look at the Sheriff's Department was looking at a drone for doing things, and I look at this. I can see some potential for it being used in other avenues. And even the Sheriff's Department, if something happened where they have to go looking for somebody, or there's, say, a natural disaster and a house falls down or something, that you have a remote vehicle that can go into places where people can't. Do I see a need for it? Honestly, I do. As far as you know, the expense of it, the car itself, I know because I was looking at it, it's about $400. The camera, another $200 or $300. It's not jacked up in price. Personally, I can see why, and I'm not opposed to getting it. So, I mean, if you want to wait till Fred's here, I mean, I will honor that, but me personally, I can see this being a very useful tool. So,
yeah, I mean, what I'm going to do, or what I would recommend doing if the county does not approve this, is I will talk to Fillmore County and say, you know what, can we share? Can I get it for 2-3 weeks? Look at some roadways that we want to go out there and like for this next year, County 10 and County 249. Looking at the following year, probably look at the County 6 culverts as well. You know, you have those areas where you know that we're going to be looking at every single one of those culverts. We can get that unit at that point, but then throughout the year, there's also times that come up when it's like, okay, so there's some issue that's going on. We don't know if it's a separation of the joint, what's going on, unless you dig open the roadway. So that happens several times, you know, I'd say 4 or 5 times a year. So, you know, it gets to be one of those things, you know, cost effectiveness, you know, is it better for us to replace something, dig up a roadway, or
Well, I understand your
run back and
rationale,
forth?
but,
And,
yeah.
and we can definitely run back and forth and try to share a little bit, or, you know, whatever the board decides on this. I think, you know, ultimately in the long run, you know, a couple years worth of, you find one location where you don't replace a pipe, and that's saves a lot of money. So
Well, our next meeting isn't until November 13th now because of the election.
actually, it's the following week, isn't it? That's the second.
Yes.
That's the second Tuesday.
No, we didn't set up a meeting for the 13th.
Either way, there's no
So that
rush.
you'd
so-
be comfortable yet at the 13th? I mean, it's
Yep.
not like you need it tomorrow. Or
Yep.
the only other thing that I know they use the Revo. The other thing I was thinking about too, if you guys are going to build it yourself, there's a couple. Just looking at, there's a couple of RC stuff on tracks too. That I'm just thinking about if you get some, like I know the culvert by our house gets mud in there, and this will go through it. But I'm just, if you're building it yourself and not buying it, just to look at that as an option.
Yeah, and we've talked about that. I was just talking to the Fillmore County engineer about that as well, about the track options. So.
I read through it in great detail too, and I thought the cost wasn't that bad for all the good it could do, but I did question also that maybe we could share it with Fillmore County. They want to use it also, maybe they'd go in on it a little bit, but the cost is not that high for something, this kind of technology, actually.
Well, and it's, I don't mean to use this word. I don't, I'm not going to use the word cheap. I'm going to say less expensive to maintain than a lot of things. And then if you ever want to sell it, there's a kid in the school, I'm sure, that would love to buy it someday. But I think it could be useful, like we was talking about, sharing with some other counties and see what happens. And if it's, hey, buy our time for the employee to come over and do your inspections for you, you know, so they don't have to figure out how to use it all, whatever the case may be. But if you want to wait and bring it back and talk more about it, I'm fine with that.
Why don't we put it on the agenda for the 13th? With more information?
In the meantime, I might just try to build one.
You should.
Yeah.
That'd be fun.
Okay.
The next
Do
agenda
we have
item.
I'm sorry, do we have to move to,
No, it can be just
It just
tabled
be
and-
put on the
we'll just
agenda.
move it to the next,
13th.
okay.
Yep.
The next item then is, similar to this last one, is that, we don't need to do anything with this today if you prefer to wait. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of discussion on drones the last few years. The Federal Highway is really pushing the use of drones on bridge inspections. And I actually got a phone call from Federal Highway yesterday on using them on more on our normal everyday construction type projects, prior to construction, during construction for different aspects, then after construction. Here's a kind of an example of what's done. This is St. Louis County. So this bridge right up here in the top, there's some bearing pads that are sitting on top of those beams. Well, when you're standing on the ground, a lot of times underneath the bridge, you're either on riprap or there's water where these bearing pads are. You can't see them very good. And you're standing a long ways away from the actual structure itself. So FHWA is recommending, in State Bridge Office, and everyone's kind of looking at the use of drones on various aspects. You can fly a drone up, you can look at the condition of the bearing pads of all the individual components, cracks on bridges. You can see stuff from a really close viewpoint. With this first-person vision goggles, what you're seeing on the screen is right here in front of your face. So you actually see the cracks better with the goggles on than what you can on the screen. So they're really pushing on using this, at the county and state systems nationwide. This is several counties in the state now have drones for this purpose. You can also use them for, and what I would like to use them for is when we measure our stockpiles, which need to be done every year for the audit purposes. We sell some sand to the state. We use sand on our own projects. We can use, you can fly a drone over a site, and the pictures from them that you get from the drone, you can use to calculate volumes. You can actually calculate volumes based on a aerial photo from the drone with the GPS built into it. And that's minimal expense. What I've been told is you fly the drone over it, and within half an hour to an hour of time, depending on how big of an area, you can get a volume computed. Software that all the consultants have, you can buy a subscription for monthly or one-time use type subscription, or you can go to a consultant that already has the program. So we could use it that way, and then I have some other notes, but after the flood that we had here in August, went to HOCA, and HOCA had a video that they presented there with the governor there in the state legislature, kind of showing the Como Falls area after the flood, what the damage looked like up and down that stream. When you go to an area after a flood, you either walk up and down taking pictures or videos down from the ground, but sometimes you're standing at areas that you probably shouldn't be standing that close to the edge, trying to get good pictures for FEMA, for the state, to document what you have for damage. With the drone, you go out there and you fly up in the air, you take your pictures or your video, and you're good to go. Like I mentioned before, there's also the talk about using them on road projects and other type of construction projects. So it's going more and more in that direction. I was at a meeting, peer exchange with people from all over the nation there. One's from as far west as Seattle, Washington. As far east, I think there's someone there from New York or Maryland or someplace like that. All looking at utilizing these. The discussion there was using for GAS, using for the sheriff's office, using for highway departments. What type of setup is best. What everyone has pretty much come to the conclusion on is that what the sheriff's office needs a drone for, they're generally looking for a bigger drone with infrared camera. It can have some capacity to hold some weight, get around. Those drones are $30,000 to $60,000 once you get them fully set up with the cameras and stuff. For uses like what highway departments need them for, or would like to have them for, you want to have a small drone that you can get underneath areas into tight spaces. The drone itself is about $1,500. You add the vision goggles to help. You can actually control the camera with your head. As you turn your head, you take pictures, you take videos, all with those goggles. It's a different type of setup, and it's you're not really going to save a bunch of money by having a drone, but you're going to increase the quality of your inspections. Safety-wise, you don't need to get a ladder out to crawl up into some areas to look at them all the time. You can get up there and get a good view without getting hands-on every time. I'd like to pursue this if the county board's willing. Another use at the airport, we're going to be doing that master plan. Starting off, the very first thing the consultant did is they said, we want to come down and survey your airport. What they meant by a survey is come down here, fly over the airport with a drone. They took video, zoomed in, and they looked at the runway, at counted the lineal foot of cracks that's out there, and trying to see what the pavement conditions are based on the drone footage. They have 3D model of the airport, and this was about half an hour worth of flying with the drone. They were able to capture this. 996 pictures during that time. I figured that this model will open up in my office, but it's not going to open up here now that I'm sitting in front of you. But 3D model, where you can look at it from kind of my angle. It's all from a drone up above. Here it goes. So once it gets rendered completely, you'll see that the 3D model looks much better. Here it's coming around. So this is the way that technology is going. So I would like to pursue this. For a $3,000 setup, again, it's not a huge cost, but it is an expense. But it can increase your qualities. Stockpiles, we don't need to be physically climbing over a pile of sand where you take that risk of that sand falling. You don't need to necessarily be putting a ladder up against a beam and trying to walk all the way up and take really get up close and have that risk of falling. If you can do it with a drone type thing. So I have not talked to the sheriff's department about this. They've been talking about it. I shouldn't say I haven't. I talked to Mark a little bit before in the past, a long time ago. I haven't talked about this recently, just because kind of what they want for a setup is different than what we need or what we would like to have. So
I'm gonna step up on my soapbox again. Brian kind of came in with two things that are in my wheelhouse, so I'm going to talk about them. I've got racing drones, so I do them for competition. First-person goggles, same thing that you're kind of talking about. So I know a little bit about what we're talking about. I will tell you this. What Brian is asking for is not, how do I say this? It's not a huge, it's not, how do I say this? The drone he's asking for is a very reasonable drone for what you're getting price-wise. If there was two departments that I would say this technology is very useful and needed for, it's the sheriff's department and the highway department. The question is, could you get one and share it between the two? It's questionable. I'll give you a little bit of background. The drones that I use for racing are very small. They're very fast. They'll do like 120 miles an hour. They're very nimble. Quality of the picture isn't very good, but you only have about $500, $700 into them. The good ones that take the good images that like Brian's asking for can range between $2,500, $5,000, whatever. The first-person goggles, is kind of essential, especially when you're getting in really tight places. It does take some practice, though. I mean, it is difficult, and I do have a simulator that you guys can have for employees to practice on or whatever. But I see a direct need for this, and the reason why I say that is Brian's right. This is the way that technology is going. The things that you will find uses for this for is there's uses that you don't even know you're going to use it for today that you will use it for. You mainly need it for images and pictures. We were talking about like the airport. You can fly long distances. You can take a bunch of pictures, send it off to a company, and they'll stitch the pictures together to have one gigantic picture. That's one of the purchases I'd like to get for our farm. So that the technology right now on the drone, and I'll get to this because it kind of relates to the sheriff's department, and since the sheriff is here, we might as well kill two birds in one stone and talk about it. For instance, like for our farm, there's a drone out there that's $8,000. I can't afford it now, but someday I hope to get it. But it has 4 different cameras on it, so you can get infrared, near infrared, NDVI imaging, and regular camera imaging. So like in the agricultural world, it'll actually tell you by scanning the tissues of the plants what they're deficient in nutrient-wise. So you fly over it once every month and you can see that, hey, you know what, we're really lacking on soil in this, or I mean on water in this area. Might be something to look at for irrigation-wise. It'll tell you if you're low on nitrogen or any of the nutrients, magnesium, whatever. It'll also do a projected yield count. In July, I can tell you what my yield is. So in August, I can see if I lost yield due to weather. That's something that I see the sheriff's department more in use for when you're looking at, say, finding a suspect in a field in the middle of the night, having infrared on it. Those are a little bit more expensive, but the needs are different. But like I said, I do see this as something coming down the pipe that it's a useful tool. I'm telling you, I know a lot of people would say, well, that's not necessary. I do believe when we look at efficiencies going forward with county departments, this is what's going to gain us a lot of efficiencies, is this type of tool. I'm partial to it just because I'm into this kind of thing. But because I'm into it, I can tell you firsthand experience that I do believe that this is something we need to look at in the highway department and the sheriff's department. We're at the front edge of it where I don't believe a lot of the other counties have gotten this stuff yet. So it is something to look at as far as being able to farm it out. If we had it, kind of like we do with the K9, we've got the technology. If you guys have a major disaster, we can bring over our highway department guy and check some of your stuff for you. Or if there's a issue in Winona with a suspect they can't find, we can, just like you take the dog over, you take the drone over and you do it. I don't believe that what Brian's asking for is out of line as far as what the price of drones go for. This is reasonable. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that's my
Maybe
personal.
we need to look at
time of
something
it.
that both departments can use.
I'm going to add a little more to this.
Yeah.
We recently attended the International Assessing Officers Conference.
Yeah.
One of the keynote speakers spoke about drones because now
Need
we
to get closer to the mic.
Oh, and turn it on.
we have gated
Turn your mic on.
properties.
Sorry. There you go.
I don't know. The assessing field is starting to look at the use of drones also for exterior pictures, and especially when there's properties that are gated.
Yeah.
Assessors aren't allowed to open gates, cross gates, whatnot, but it would allow for effective photography of the exterior of those buildings so that a more accurate assessment can be performed. So you may want to not just consider those two departments, but also look at the assessors.
Well, and that's a good point. Now, a couple things that you bring up, I'm going to highlight on. There's a lot of things that you can do with a drone that you can't do from the ground. Like Brian said, you can't take pictures and get a real assessment of what's happening. The assessors thing, same thing. I mean, there's certain places or things that you could just literally park on the side of the road and fly it over and bring it back. You don't even have to be there. As far as multiple departments go, the only thing that I would caution with the sheriff's department being different than the other ones, if we're looking at just imaging like you do for the assessor's office or the highway department, I could see the need for thermal imaging in the sheriff's department, and I'd really hate for somebody to be inspecting a bridge with an $8,000 thermal imaging one, hit the pillar and put the thing in the drink. And that's the other thing too, when you look at bridge inspections across a river. Instead of getting they've got the inspection trucks with the arms that go underneath, and you got to crawl into it and do that. It's expensive to get those guys to come out and do it. Here you can sit on the bank and inspect what the bridge is like in the middle of the river and not have to worry about it. So as far as getting one that we could use multiple departments might be something to look at, or just maybe you can get some relatively inexpensive. Maybe the assessor's office needs to look at that as well. But I know the sheriff's needs, and I don't know that at this point, depending on what their needs are, might be a little bit more expensive, and I'd hate to see that get hammered or dinged up. Last thing is, we're seeing that now with the telephone companies and electrical companies, and even with the guys with renewable energies and windmills are using them to inspect like telephone poles and other big structures. There was a guy when I was working at the airport in Winona. His entire job was to hang off the side of a helicopter to inspect telephone poles and electrical lines. The guy was nuts. I met him. Nice guy, a little odd. I'm sure you have to be to do what he's doing. But, I mean, it's expensive with a helicopter at $2,500 an hour to run. They're now doing it with a drone for next to nothing, basically the price of the person's salary. So I do see this coming up, and Michelle makes a good point. We have other options, so we're going to have to deal with this probably more in the future.
Yeah, this drone that we're recommending, it would probably work good for the assessor's office. Like I said, it would not work for the sheriff's office for their needs. I don't want to send my guys out with a high dollar drone. The one thing that, because of the type of inspections, when you start looking at bridges, you want to have a camera that can go up and not just down. A lot of drones are set up where they're just down or down with angles, but they can't go up at all. This one can go 30 degrees up, which might not seem like a lot, but when you're 3 feet below a beam at 30 degrees up, you're pretty close to seeing everything to know. By that 30 degree up, you don't need to go straight up.
What was the cost of this one?
So the complete setup, and this is, I have several things on this. It's about $3,000. You have the drone is $1,500, about $400 for the goggles, or the drone and goggles combined are in that $1,900 range, and then extra batteries, chargers, memory card, stuff like that. All the additional components to go with it adds up to about another $1,000, and that's including essentially an insurance package where if you crash the drone the first time, you get a replacement within the first year. The first time, you get a replacement for $120. Second time, replacement is like $140. So if you crash the drone on day one, you don't need to go out there and buy another $1,500 drone. You have some type of warranty. That's being highly recommended as well because of the use of it. You're trying to fly in an enclosed space with people that aren't used to it, so that first year having some type of coverage, they said, is very valuable, because they said good chance that you will crash it at least once.
I will someday I'll bring mine over, you guys can play with it, but they're very durable. And I hit our grain bin doing about 70 miles an hour, and it hit the ground and got back up and kept on and going. You'll break props. That's the big thing, is the props. But like I said, I've got a simulator that you guys can have, but you need to use it because it gets to be kind of cumbersome. It's difficult. But I don't know, whatever you want to do. If you want to wait on this one too until Freddie gets here.
I would just mention to Commissioner Zemieski that drone has another definition too, of droning on and on.
Oh, Jack, kind of like your stories, right?
I guess I'm convinced, but if we could get exact figures, is the 3 is pretty tight?
Yeah, $3,000 is going to get us what we need. The reason why I kind of start buying from different sources. So the case that you carry the drone in might be from a different source than. And as I was doing my research, going to the place that the other counties have gone through to buy their stuff, some of the places that there were none in stock at the time, so you couldn't get added to a cart to get all the prices at one location. So that's why, kind of, and they sent that shopping cart over. It had, the one had $2,775, and then another one had $199. So that's that, essentially $3,000.
Okay.
In the Mavic 2 is a good platform, but DJI is like one of the top ones out there, so getting replacement parts is fairly easy. And that also, looking at the Sheriff's Department too, is something to look at. The platform that I was talking about with the infrared and stuff, DJI makes that one too. So then you'd have kind of, not necessarily, be the same company, but.
Well, I would make a motion then to approve the purchase.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Anybody want to drone on? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Rodney Barsh.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Rodney Barch from Wabasha County. I'm here to give an annual report, which I've failed to give you the last couple of years. I believe it was after our first year, starting in 2013. We gave a report in 2014. We had some good numbers. Since then, we've went through a couple different investigators, and Nate here is our fourth one now working in this endeavor. What we're finding is it's a little bit unique for law enforcement people. It's not necessarily law enforcement work, what they're doing or what they maybe set out to do early in their careers. But Nate's pretty excited about getting going. I think Nate's been with us 2 months. 2 months, or yeah.
Well, yep.
And he's been with the department about 6 years, so he's excited about it. And that's all I asked for, was somebody to be excited about it. And if we didn't have that person, I would have been asking one of the other 4 counties to try to find a person that would be excited about doing it, because it's important work. We'll look at numbers, and I'm going to try to commit to get back here next year, sometime in the fall, and then start putting together a year-to-year how we're doing compared to each year. The state wants us to come up with at least a 3-to-1 ratio on our dollars that they've given us, and I think they've given the region about 90 grand. And last year that we put together about $451,000 in savings, and those are savings that from the federal government. Those aren't savings locally here. If it was locally, it'd be much easier to put more people on this. It'd be really easy to do that. In fact, people have said, and they said, well, we can't just do that because it's savings. It isn't actual money locally here that we can put our hands on, but it is money from the federal government, which our taxes go to support. When we look at the one of the neat things that happened last year for our investigator that ended up not being real enthused about the job towards the end was he had some incredible numbers. He had 59 disqualifications, and if we look at 623 statewide, he had 10% in this region. And I think that's more than incredible that he had that many disqualifications. And I'm guessing a lot of areas don't work for those disqualifications necessarily, but we say if you're cheating, we're going to get you off the system. And that gets him off for at least a year, I believe. Yep. So we look at the individual numbers, with you guys having 12 and a $4,000 savings or overpayment that was stopped. Those 12 cases could have easily have been 100,000 as well. We just don't know how much savings is going to come on a particular case. And I believe one of our bigger ones was actually in Wabasha a couple years ago. It was a guy that had been claiming benefits and didn't think it was important to tell the county about his inheritance that he got from his dad when he died. And that was over 100,000, and we did go after prosecuting him. one of the questions that does come up is, how many people are getting prosecuted because a crime is a crime is a crime? Well, in this environment and the number of cases that we're having to work in this region, we have to go fast, and we have to get to a lot of different places. Putting these cases together, which we're not opposed to doing, takes time. And we think that getting them disqualified, they sign off on it a lot quicker if they know that that may be the only ramification, is that they can walk away. So it's really up to Nate to decide the merits of the case, the amounts of the case, and then talk with the individual county attorneys. And Nate's still building his relationships with those people. So we're not opposed to charging people out, but we do have to run between all these cases, what we have going. So your numbers, they do not look bad. They look very comparable to Wabasha and Fillmore. And then we're doing most of the work in where you would expect in Winona and Goodyear. But this county is as important to us as Goodyear and Winona is. And so we're here to answer any questions that you might have. And Nate may have some recent examples as well as what he's typically seeing.
I would be, I guess I'm curious, how does Nate prioritize?
Good question.
I'm not quite sure yet. I have a caseload. My first day, I believe I had 36 cases, open investigation cases, that I've been trying to learn my new role as well as close these cases and move on.
Well, you got 3 days this week yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Well,
And we
I'll
drove
be working
separate
on
down
it.
here because
I'll be working on it.
he's working down here.
Well, so that's a lot, but how, and I'm, quite frankly, I don't know enough about it to maybe ask her, but how do you find out about the cases in Houston County?
Typically, Health and Human Resources will have a referral based system that sends me a referral with who's on assistance and their concerns, and then I launch an investigation based off of that. Is typically how it goes. I'll conclude my investigation and send my findings back to Health and Human Services.
And even if you got an individual tip yourself, you would be referring it to that county and say, hey, I got a tip, start up this case, and then it comes back.
Correct.
I would assume, as you mentioned, tips, a neighbor or somebody is saying, hey, something doesn't add up here, kind of thoughts, or?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something I would look into, and if I find some, a little bit of concern or fraudulent something, I would pass that on to Health and Human Services, and that procedure has to be done in order for me to get a referral.
I think there's still more work to be done here in regards to law enforcement working with Nate in each of the counties, and we're 5 years into this, and there's so many cases that we're going out in the law enforcement world that, you know what, so and so is living there. Did you know that? No, we didn't, and that's important. That's one of the bigger things is this unreported income in the household, and one of the harder things though is taking away benefits from the people that really need it. And there's a lot of needy people in all our counties. So, I mean, we're also compassionate to that, and that may be some of the drain on some of the past investigators as well.
Okay.
All right, we hope to be back next year and have a chart to compare last year's with. And he's got a big hill in front of him, and I just told him to pace himself because he needs to do this for the next 24 years.
Yeah,
Well,
there you go.
Excuse me. So do you come down and, I mean, I see some of our people in the social service sitting in the back. Do you get to know? I mean, do you come down and introduce yourself? And
Yep, I've done that in the 5 counties that I work, including Houston County, and I'll be in the area all day, the rest of the day today. That's kind of how I prioritize a day would be spended in the area and work as many as I can.
All right.
And that would include having a meeting with them while I'm here.
So you work with our financial workers?
Yep.
Okay.
You said, okay, so you said you had 36
Mm-hmm.
hits, or, right? Like
Cases. Yep.
So that's individual cases, it's not necessarily like duplicate of the same person on multiple things?
Correct.
So there's, do you know how, well, I suppose we probably don't, as far as percentage-wise, what there is out there to what we have fraud that we know of? You know, I mean, that's got to be, I mean, it's pretty sad that you got that many people out there that are trying to manipulate the system, but
Those are cases that were referred to me.
Sure.
I couldn't even guess at a number, but I know there's much more fraud than that.
okay. So it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, what we're hitting almost. Yeah.
Yes.
But people know it. People know it.
Yeah.
And they get to know these guys. Get complaints on them more so than I do the other people. If you can imagine benefits getting taken away, I'm going to try to do something to him. And so we're recording a lot, more so than we are on the road.
I would hope that, you know, word gets out that people are cracking down on it. Other people might get scared and say, well, they're looking, you know.
Right. That would be the hope.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. Olivia? First, we need to know what your real name is.
My name, as of last week, is officially Olivia Denny. Thank you. Good morning.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting time to get married.
Yeah.
I wanted to just give you guys an update on how that state disaster assistance process went. And unfortunately, Fred's not here, but he had some concerns about whether or not we needed to pass a resolution to accept the money. And so I've dug into that, and I wanted to report on that today, as well as my EMPG grant. So first of all, I did get the official letter from the governor stating that they would give us the 75% match throughout the county, including for the townships, the county highway department, and the city of Hoka for various things, not the actual rebuilding of the falls, but the emergency work that was done.
And how much was that for? Do you know?
The 75% was $524,000 or somewhere around there. That number might still fluctuate because a couple of the townships did report after the initial numbers were in, but that part is guaranteed, which means that the 100% was $709,000, I believe.
Okay.
So that process is all pretty much complete, at least on my end. Now it's just the county highway department and the townships in the city of Hoka finishing the work that they have to do, and then they're working directly with the state to get their monies back. As for if we need a resolution or not, I talked to the regional program coordinator, and he says we do not on the state's end. Since this isn't a FEMA disaster, it's a little different. So the state does not require that we pass a resolution to get the money. And I did talk with Attorney Yant and Michelle as well, and they could not find any evidence that that was something we needed as well. So we should be able to accept the money as is because of the emergency declaration and the request for assistance originally.
Would we be safer having a resolution on?
The RPC said if that's something we feel comfortable doing, if that's what we would rather do, that's okay. Either way, the money is going to get to us. So if we want to draft up a resolution, that is something we can do.
I guess doesn't cost anything to pass a resolution.
No, it doesn't. I can come up with one maybe for the next
That's
meeting.
how I feel too.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
All right. And then the other reason I'm here is for the my EMPG grant. That came through naturally during all of this state disaster stuff. So it was a bit of a whirlwind this year getting it all figured out. But with the help of the sheriff, we figured out how we were going to do it. The grant agreement amount was for $18,660 this year. And it does require a 50% match. So the matching also was $18,660. And what we did is we split it up between the costs accrued from training for me, which I can officially say I am now director certified in the state of Minnesota, so the training costs will go dramatically down after this year. And then the other part was for the emergency management salary, which that amount is $16,255 with an equal match. And then the training cost was $2,405. So, and that totals out to the $18,660. Now, I did a little bit of research because we've got a new situation here with our county administrator. According to our grant, bless you, our grant person at HSEM, the statute says that the board chair and the clerk of the board need to sign. And if those two were just to sign, we don't need to pass a resolution in order to sign. However, the legalese says that the vice chair can also sign in the absence of the chair. So those are both possible. Otherwise, if we wanted to have just Jeff sign it or somebody else sign it, I didn't know how everybody wanted to do it this time. So I wanted to hear what you guys had in mind. I do have a signature sheet with me, so.
Okay. I'm just curious, Olivia, if we approve this, then you send in financial reports?
Yes, once it is approved, I've been approved for the projected amount. I will work with our financial director on getting financial status reports to show that we have actually completed those, and then we will get the money in.
So we're not putting the cart in front of the horse here?
No.
That's the...
Yes.
Okay. Jeff, you're comfortable signing this as...
Yeah, absolutely. We can have the vice chair and myself sign it. And,
Okay.
So if you want a simple motion to approve it, that's all we need.
Okay. Motion to approve?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All right. And then I just want to say thank you
Well,
to you commissioners and all that.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Newlywed, hang on a second. No, we didn't do a resolution, though, for the other aspect, right?
Yeah, we should do a resolution just to have it on record, I
Yeah.
feel.
Resolution for what?
For the state.
State,
The other one,
for
yes.
the receipt of the state.
I
But
will
did you
work
want
with
to
Mich-
draft up an actual resolution,
Yep.
bring it to the next meeting, correct?
I can do that, yes.
Oh, okay.
Which is the 13th.
The 13th, I heard that, yes.
All right.
Okay.
So I can do that. And like I said, I just wanted to say thank you to the commissioners and Jeff for helping me get through my first disaster. And also Brian was really helpful as well, and the sheriff. Everybody was really helpful in getting me the information that I needed to submit to the state in order to continue that process at a
I
timely
thought
manner.
you did a very good job. And
It's
the
not over
townships
yet, but we're
really
doing our
did-
best.
Yeah.
Now you're experienced.
I am. I have experience, disaster experience now.
And I was kind of hoping you could get married at Hoka Falls, but...
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to originally, but we decided we didn't want to do an outdoor wedding, and it turns out it was for the best of us. So,
Well,
but
again, thanks very much.
yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want the signature sheet, or do you want one?
We've got a copy. I'll get it to you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is Brian and Dick Walter on Boccia Park.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I must say, Commissioner Fred, you look different.
My name in front.
We just share it, right? Oh, I do have copies of what I have, or what Park Committee agreed upon at the last meeting, about 2 weeks ago, I guess, something like that.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll start it off that the Park Committee pretty much agreed on 2 changes to the ordinance number 10, rules and regulations for Boccia Park, adopted April 8th of 2008. Adjustment to ordinance agreement by the Park Committee. The first one is adjust the name Boccia Park to Bob Boccia Park to more properly identify the donor. And the second was Chapter 6, Section B of hunting. Because this park is going to have several hiking trails and a picnic area on only 33 acres, which would make it dangerous for hiking or picnicking. Hunting must be prohibited. Now, from Attorney Yan, the Minnesota statutes giving the county board the authority to provide hunting in Bob Botcher Park. One was 97B .004 trespass, subsection 4B. We will need to post, one of the things I read in the statute was that it said that it needs to be posted, no hunting. The other thing I guess I'd like to do also is to have a sign maybe at the trailhead saying, you know, Trailhead Bob Botcher Park or something like that. So people that come up there, they know that a nice trail has been built for them. One piece of additional information that we talked about to the county board, that chapter 9, miscellaneous, of the park ordinance under contractors gives the park committee members the authority with date, time, and place to allow scout leaders and in particular at this time Troop 53 the right, if they're working out there and stuff like that, to have a camp and a campfire. And I wonder if, Michelle, do you have anything to add to that? Because that was a spectacular day you guys were out there. Okay.
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, and I would just add, all of this was thoroughly covered at our park board meeting, and the rationale makes good sense. The last part, the scout leader and the scouts did a great job. If again, they go back for more work, this is the least we can do to show our appreciation for what the efforts they put in.
Exactly.
And the county can provide the signage, I think Brian indicated last time. So I would make a motion to adopt the rules and regulations as highlighted.
I have one question before you make that motion. Is this the type of ordinance that we have to have a public hearing to change?
Is it changed to the zoning ordinance?
I'm not sure where it falls.
That would be an Aaron question. If it's changed to the actual zoning ordinance, then yes, you would.
This is in zoning ordinance, this is park.
Right, but I'm saying if there's anything in the zoning ordinances that covers this that would be affected, then it would be an issue. If it's just our own,
But
I wouldn't.
why don't we
think it
do
would.
this? We've got a couple of more items. One or both of you run up to see Aaron if he's here. If not, we could maybe put that off to the 13th too, just to clarify. What do you think?
It looks like zoning is ordinance number 6 is the zoning ordinance. The park is ordinance number 10, so it's probably separate, but I'll verify that with Aaron. And then, you know, as we talked about at that committee as well, you know, if camping is allowed by the scouts, we'd require that they notify the sheriff's office or dispatch, because we are going to put signs up then to say no hunting, no camping.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, as soon as you put up a sign saying no camping, someone's camping, sheriff's office is going to get a phone call. So, so
I guess
they will be notified. It's only going to be when they're working out there. So
Could you put on there though, just like if you said no hunting, camping by authorization only for the fact that if the troops do want to put, you know, that somebody calls in and you'd say, well, they had authorization versus,
right.
you know what I mean?
I think the intent of the committee was that they would have to get authorization from
Right.
a member of the park committee.
Because if you say no camping, then somebody would go by and say, well, it says no camping and they're camping, you know,
Yeah.
where it says
Yeah.
authorization only, it would at least
Yeah.
get the confusion out of there that,
That's exactly right. It's a good idea.
FYI, I know in the past when we changed Wildcat Park ordinance, we did hold a public hearing.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm just wondering if it'd be safer if we just did, because you could post that now for the 13th meeting, correct?
It has to be advertised.
Yeah, but for only 10
Yeah,
days.
but we have time to.
We have 14 days, right?
Yes, yeah.
I have to look at what the publication noted requirements are.
Right.
The first statute reference I find references a public hearing. But I need to do a little more research to
Well,
verify that that's some.
And it
right
probably wouldn't
reference.
be a bad idea if you did, just to say it is a change to an ordinance, and we had a hearing, nobody, showed up, or some people showed up with concerns, we addressed it. Usually I think it's 10 days notification, we don't have a meeting next week, so if we could get it out in the next couple of days, we'd be able to have it on the 13th, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that rather than err? and-
Just err on the side of caution.
I agree. You want
Okay.
to dot the i's and cross the t's.
Yeah. But I like what you put together. It covers exactly what we talked about in my memory.
But I do like the idea of having it posted with authorization, and I don't know if we need Troop 53 included
No, I think authorization would just.
for whoever is working,
Yeah.
might be Troop whatever.
Well, there was like 30 young lads out there.
That's really
working.
cool.
It was pretty cool.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay. You want us to stop? No, you're gonna just have the hearing. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Next on the agenda is Jeff and Tess with HR update.
Right. Good morning, again, Board. Just by way of update and making it public, as you all are aware, we did receive the arbitration results from the LELS Unit 237, which is our licensed deputies and investigators. The results of that were affirming the county's position on a 3-year term instead of a 2-year contract term for the group, affirming that there is not a need for a market adjustment on their salaries. It did affirm the union's proposed language for field training officer compensatory time, which is 1 hour per shift of FTO duties. And then it also affirmed the union's proposal of a 3% wage increase over the 3 years.
Well,
What
it'd be 9% over 3 years.
3% each year.
Correct.
Yes, sorry. The overall impact of that, of course, is the lieutenant's LELS unit is tied to that as well, and there are Me Too clauses with the MAPE and the ASME units are the two that have a defined Me Too clause. We're still looking to verify if the other ones do or do not. Of course, there is a historical pattern and precedent that the county has kept those wage increases uniform across the county. The budgetary impact, as we built the levy, in the preliminary levy, we were looking at a 2.5%. So this 3%, if you decided to do that across the board, would put us over the levy increase amounts. That's an amount we have to contend with. One of the things that we are trying to do to get underneath that and get over it is, as you're aware, one of the biggest cost drivers for us across the county is the health insurance premium increase to 21%. When that initially came up, we were looking at what changes we could make to the health plans, but we're looking at those going into effect for the 2020 health insurance cycle. In further review, if we act quickly and if both sides compromise and we move quickly, we have the ability to get to close the one plan and put people onto a single plan. And if we did that, we would be looking at that 21% increase would decrease to 16%. So effectively a $95,000 savings, which would essentially negate the concern of being over the preliminary levy in and of itself. And then there's other savings revenue options that we can look at as well. On the health plans, there are 25 users across the county of our approximately 160 employees. There are 25 that use the more expensive health plan, or at least where the increase is driving it. So Tess is working with the unions to look at the opportunity of bringing those employees from one plan to the other, and an effective way to do that, so as to minimize the impact on the individuals for that. And of course, as we've gone forward and we look at what's budgeted versus what's going to be actual expenses and things, some of the other actions that have happened in the recent year, I don't have a monetized amount yet, but as you know, we've reduced some of the department head positions and replaced them with, as we've consolidated the areas, we've replaced those positions with a lower graded position. And so there is savings there that is not yet reflected in the preliminary budget that was put in. And that's something that we'll be able to flesh out in more detail as we go forward on what those actual savings are going to be to the budget expenses.
Now, I had had conversation with Carol, and we kind of talked about what this is going to do impact-wise. I think we were at 6.944 was what, 864,000 or something like that, and then this increase we figured would be somewhere around 300, maybe over $300,000 plus. So we're going from like a 860,000 to like almost a $1.2 million increase. When we look at ways of curbing this, the county took the position during negotiations. Our final offer was a 2, 2, and 2. So 6%, and on that we were at 95% coverage on the healthcare insurance for that. Unfortunately, when things get settled the way they are, I was a little bit agitated that you settle this as a higher increase to the employees, but then we don't get the option to look at the health insurance again. That, okay, well, you got more, now can we work on the health insurance to try and offset that? It was kind of a, nope, this is a final done deal package. Looking at going to a single plan, I think obviously has to be looked at. The personnel committee and Jack and I met. We had talked or emailed out to Tess Kruger and HR and the administrator, Jeff Babinski, just about what options we have going forward as far as how do we curb this. When our not to exceed levy was at 6.9, we're now looking at 2.5% above that. Obviously, we got to get it down, and there's going to have to be some sort of cuts being made. What are those cuts going to be? Some of them might have to be very difficult cuts, but that's the nature that we're at. So I don't know if we want to talk about that more in depth. One suggestion, Carol, I don't know if you had a 1% decrease to all departments, where would that bring us? Or a 2, or things like that. Finding what that would be. We got to look at personnel situations. Basically, turn over every rock, I guess, is kind of what we discussed as far as how do you curb this expense.
Yeah, I think there are a number of avenues one could look at. We could freeze all equipment purchases. We could look at not adding personnel when asked. To say I'm disappointed in the arbitration would be a gross understatement. I don't want to get into it all again, but to indicate that we aren't haven't been adequately providing for employees is very false in my mind. And you know, to hear each meeting for the last month or so that I like my job and I'm good at my job. Well, I don't know that we've ever, at least when I've been here, I don't think we've ever hired anyone that we expected to be bad at the job. Being good at the job is an expectation, not that you get rewarded with what you signed up to do and what you signed up to get paid to do it. But so I think between Carol, Tess, Jeff, and the board, we need to sit down and look at a whole lot of avenues here.
And I think we need to look down to at you know, cuts that are repetitive. What do I mean by that? When we give out raises, it's not a raise one time and then it goes back to what your salary was before. This is a perpetual, ongoing issue. 3% of what you make this year is not the same as 3% the following year. It's now 3% of what you made. That includes the 3% the following year. So it's a compounding issue. And that's going forward. It's not, well, this will sunset in 10 years and we'll go back to what our pay was 10 years ago. This is now going to be a permanent increase. So looking at not just an expense that's a one-time expense, but what expenses do we have that are perpetual, ongoing, that are going to help curb this as that, you know, 3 years this year, or 3% this year, 3% the next year, 3% the next year. What do we have that's going to be a cut that's going to help reflect that, or else we're going to be in the same boat next year and the year after? How do we make up for that increase?
Well,
So
and I think we have to.
That's what I think we
yeah.
really got to drill down to.
Well, I think the public needs to hear and understand too that some of these raises are on top of steps.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah.
So they're really getting 2 raises rather than one, and so we have a lot to talk about.
I think you got to keep Fred and I and whoever will be on our options to be considered too.
Well,
Because I know the
that's-
Personnel Committee's been working on this with Tess and Jeff and Carol, but I actually have, till I got the letter with the arbitration, haven't heard much discussion at all.
Well, and I think that's where we'll have to have a closed session meeting at the next meeting to discuss all of our options. Just to go through and bring the board up to date where we're at,
Yeah.
what's being looked at. But it does put it in a conundrum. And the other thing too is, I'll add to what Jack said. You know, when I sat down with Tess a couple months ago and went through what the raises have been for the last 10 years. And when you're looking at almost a 30% increase in the last 10 years, and now another 9% in the course of 13 years, being near a 40% increase. Like Jack said, that does not count steps. That's solely increases. And then you look at health insurance being covered at 95%. This is why personnel is our biggest expense. With that being said, yesterday we were at the district meeting, and this isn't an issue that just Houston County is facing. This is something that all counties are facing. When we look at what the increases for a lot of the other counties in our district are, almost all of them, if not all of them, their number one expense was
Insurance.
wages and insurance, and everybody's insurance is going up. So this isn't necessarily an isolated issue, but it is compounded, I think, in Houston County a little bit more just because of what the unions were asking for. But this is a problem that's going on, as health insurance costs are rising and everybody's dealing with it. So just the nature in which we live right now.
Yep. Is that it, Jeff?
I think for now, yes.
Any other HR matters that need to be brought up?
Not under this topic, but very shortly under the consent item. I have a couple for you.
Okay.
I guess the next meeting, the 13th, if the two of you, Tess and Jeff, plan on bringing some options, and Carol, right in on that one, bring some options for us, what we're looking at, how to get this down.
I don't think it can be a closed session.
Well, it might, depending on what we're looking at dealing personnel-wise. I don't know. You know, you have to look into that if we need to go into a closed session or not. You know, if it's, you know, I don't know. You know, I'll leave that up to you guys.
Go ahead. Yes.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
One of the options that we are looking at, let me preface this to say that an across-the-board cutting of positions is going to take a little longer possibly than just till the 13th, because we really need to look at what the impact of doing that to other departments and the services. We certainly will do our best to try to accommodate that request. That said, our office has already started on, and I've met with the county administrator, Jeff, on this, as looking at one of what we can do that is as part of the team, both management and employees, in coming together to see what we can do to lower our operating cost across the board, that being on wages and benefits, the cost of health care. We know that today, and I've had a brief meeting with one union and if calls into another union and trying to set those calls up. We know today that if we went to a single plan, the consumer-driven health care plan, and we're able to reduce, eliminate, if you will, our comprehensive major medical plan, which is kind of an archaic animal of the 70s, if you will, that if we were to be able to eliminate that plan in conjunction with our employee partners, if you will, that would save the county in 2019 just shy of $95,000. That in and of itself would reduce our increase to a level that, although is still steep, 16.4%, but it reduce it from 21.9%. We have, the finance director supplied me with the information yesterday that we have, it's either 24 or 25 employees on the on the comprehensive major medical plan, I'll just call it the CMM, and approximately 100 employees on the consumer-driven health plan, or the VIBA HSA. That said, long-term, looking forward, we would still need to, our goal is to always reduce the volatility of our premiums. To a certain degree we can control that, to a certain degree we can't. It depends upon if there's been major, the number of high-level claims that had to be paid out in a given year. We had the benefit of a 0-0, I think, a 0-0 2.5, which is kind of unheard of in a time when across the state our health insurance was increasing on the average of 7.3 to 7.8% a year. Yeah, well, then there are major claims. We are looking at that. I have confidence that the business agents will take a hard look at that with us. We're trying really, my office, I can only commit to what I am making endeavors to do, and that is to work very diligently with our, in conjunction with our employees, to see if we can't lower those costs and eliminate that. If we are successful in doing that for 2019, and that is a big if, we will still need to meet as a insurance team, a collaborative, if you will, across the county, to try to take a look at the insurance model itself. You know, these models are not unlike computer systems, if you will. They need to be tweaked and updated as we go along, and it's been, Carol, 6 years? Oops, Carol stepped out. I believe it's been, Commissioners, approximately 6 years since we did the last big
She
tweak
just
on
came
that.
back.
Carol's been about 6 years ago. We did the hard work of looking at our insurance and reducing from 3 CMMs to 1 with the consumer-driven health plan. Yeah. 12. You know, and we were very successful. At that time, we were faced with double-digit increases in the 20s. And we saw through this model adjustment them coming down. I have absolute faith that we can do that again as a team. And that said, we will be looking at any organizationally, not just at the staff, but the actual systems in place, both the use of technology, how we leverage that technology, how we leverage our positions, how do we organize the content of the duties of those positions in a way that actually is going to provide for increased services, if you will. And although some may disagree with me, I would say at a lower cost to the county. You know, there is, I do think we're capable of that. And maybe not lower cost, but maybe the rate of increase being lower. How's that? That's probably more realistic.
Okay, I have the 25 that are on the plan you referenced. 22 agree to switch, 3 don't. That negates it?
It's my understanding that Blue Cross Blue Shield will not support a plan with less than 10, of 10 or less. 10 is the trigger.
Okay.
I guess I gotta, so what you're asking for is if we went away with that plan and not everybody agrees to go away with the plan? Okay, at what point does the county just say, we're not providing it?
Commissioner.
Less than 10, I guess, right?
Commissioners, we do this unit by unit.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm in conversations with units instead of waiting till 3 years out. I'm in conversations, or at least trying to get those conversations going and making headway yet this week. I don't know what the results will be. Like I said, this has a collaborative effort, and I do have indications of that there will be some discussions. But if we do this for 2019, it has to be done in very short order. It has to be done because we have annual enrollment in, I believe it's the 20th of November, Carol? Somewhere. We have to contact Blue Cross Blue Shield. They have to be able to get all their end of the work together as far as, you know, cards and who's enrolled and on what plan. Bill Kalopoulos is, you know, I'll be in touch with him to assist in that process as well.
So how did, I guess I was under the impression it worked a little differently. How does that work then? I mean, so if the county says we can't afford to provide this service, we basically have to ask the unions if it's for permission to.
It is a negotiated term of employment.
Okay.
If affordability is an issue, we'll have to show affordability is an issue. We were not successful in this arbitration showing that affordability was an issue.
Well, I guess that's what I'm getting at. If you have an arbitrator that says, no, I don't think so, you can afford whatever you want, raise taxes, tough, then we'll never get out from underneath that. I guess the question that I have is, you know, if the board, I guess, what's the board's authority that, and this is kind of an extreme case, but, you know, we're still providing health insurance, and we said that we would do that. We just are not going to provide this health insurance. You know, I guess it's hard because I look at, you know, do we have to go to the unions for everything? We want to buy a truck. Is it okay if we buy a truck? I mean, we said we would provide health insurance. These are the two plans. We're not going to do this, but you still have health insurance. We'll still pay 95% of that premium coverage, but we're just no longer going to offer this. If the problem that I have is if we go to the unions and they say, no, we don't want to, Well, now we're stuck back to the exact spot that we were at. What is our bargaining strength? Because what I've heard from this arbitration is the board really doesn't have any. The union says we want this, we go to an arbitrator. If the arbitrator goes with that, the union or the county is really powerless.
I don't believe that's accurate, Commissioner, but if
Well-
we were going to talk about, just a moment, please, if we were going to talk about labor negotiation strategy, my recommendation is we do that in closed session.
Well, and I guess that's what I was asking earlier was, do we go into closed session and talk about this November 13th?
If we're talking about our strategy for negotiations, yes.
And my clarification is what power does the board really have? Because if anything that's shown us with this arbitration is the board's really powerless, then, you know, if we can't make a decision based on this is what we can provide, and I understand the negotiating aspect of it, that we will negotiate it, but we're still providing what we said we would provide, we just can't provide it in this mannerism. You know, I guess that's my question is, go ahead.
Yeah, we better maybe cut it off at this point instead of getting into strategizing today, so.
That has to be done in a closed session.
Well, and that's why I'd like to have a closed session meeting
Yeah.
on the 13th, what I was getting at earlier.
Yeah, I would concur with that.
But I just wanted to give you some information of where we were going today, and that it's a positive direction, it's a positive message, and I will update you. I certainly will also make a request for the closed session through the administrator's office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please keep us all informed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the last comment on that was just, this is an action that if all agree to, can be taken quickly. And it certainly isn't the only action that we need to take, and we will have some more fleshed out options for you as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, action items, approving the claims.
I move to approve the claims, human service and license center disbursements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda, that's just items to be placed on file, the administrative personnel actions from last week, and the MCIT 2018 annual meeting announcements, which we discussed last week also. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I was waiting for someone else to second.
Opposed? Okay, commissioner report. Oh, good, I don't need to be first.
Right.
Justin.
We just had the district meeting yesterday up in Wabasha that the three of us all attended. Well, I should say the four of us all attended because Jeff was there as well, but the three commissioners. The meeting, I thought, those are good meetings to kind of find out what other counties are dealing with and issues that are going on. Also gives us an update on the legislative side of things from the state, what can be expected, what the counties would like to see in for the next legislative agenda that's coming forward for next time when session starts again in January. So it's a good opportunity for the Association of Minnesota Counties to bring information and to gather information from the counties to take back to try and implement at the state level. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the counties reported on what their increases were for their projected levies for 2019, and the majority of them are dealing with the same issues we are, which is obviously wages and health insurance increases. Other than that, I thought, other than it being a long meeting, it was a good meeting to get some information out there, receive some information, and see what the pulse of the rest of the district is. That was it.
Yep. I guess I really don't have much to add to what Justin said. It's always a good meeting, as he said, to share ideas and to gather ideas that seem to work for other counties. So,
We should talk about that. The other thing is that enterprise fleet management.
I mentioned that to Jeff, made a note on that, and I talked to Fred about it last night, so we will.
Real quick, just for people out there, one of the things that a lot of the counties seem to be going towards is Enterprise, the big rental car company, has a fleet management service. Some of the counties are taking advantage of that as far as getting on lease programs through Enterprise. Some of them, or I guess most of them, said it was working really well, so we kind of...
Again, it's got to be a cost comparison thing in my
Exactly.
mind, and
Right.
Yeah, we'll run the numbers. It's very similar to the GSA fleet leasing,
Yeah.
which the government has used for a number of years, and there's a growing pain when you first go through it. Whether it's you start with a couple of cars and work your way into it, or whether you turn over the assets right off the bat. So there's several ways to look at doing it. We'll do a cost comparison and see what comes up.
And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but it should be explored at least, I would think.
the other meeting of significance met with Jeff and Fred concerning the maintenance building. Again, we're nothing conclusive at this point. We're discussing what we had previously discussed.
The highway
about.
department, are you talking about? Or?
Yeah, highway.
Okay.
So that's all I got.
All right. I went to the same meeting as the rest. What did one commissioner say? It was a meeting of love and misery.
Yeah.
They too, and we did get some of the election of some of the items that they're going to push. AMC will push at the next legislative session, which is January 8th, starting. Anything else that you want to bring up as commissioners?
No, not really.
Okay.
The only thing I will say is, I mentioned it earlier, but I went to the District 3 debate/forum over in at the library here in town. There was actually I was kind of shocked. I would have thought there'd be a little bit better turnout. There was probably 30 people, maybe somewhere around there. But it was interesting, some of the responses from some of the candidates. The one thing Fred and I did talk about was that the one thing that was apparent was that there is a lot of misinformation out there, that people really don't know what's happening and going on at the county level. I know some of us, I know Fred and I tried to get articles out to try and educate the public, but there's some things that were being talked about that were not even close to what was actually happening. So Fred and I kind of talked about making sure that we get the information out there being provided to more people and more accurately, to try and curb some of the odd conspiracy theories that are out there. So, but other than that, it was good.
Jeff, on this administrator's personnel actions, did that include the hiring for jail dispatcher? Is that part of the approval that we did?
Yes, yeah, the two actions on that are our two jailer dispatchers hired at B23-2, step 1. So
Okay,
goes through that. We still have some lead dispatcher positions that are in the process of, hopefully will be filled soon.
I saw it in our packet, and I just want to make sure it was part of our approval.
Yes.
Anything else? Well, I also had a candidate forum too, same night though.
Yeah,
But
I know.
I didn't hear too many conspiracy theaters issues at that one at all, because it included the city candidates too.
I was kind of disappointed that it was on the same night, because I really wanted to get over there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been fun. But.
Yeah, ours included the city of La Crescent people. There's, what, 5 people running, Jack? I think,
5.
and 2 of their candidates were there.
Yeah, 2 of the 5 running
Two
for
of them,
city
really?
council showed up, so
Yeah.
it was kind of strange.
I
Wow.
thought that was very strange. And then we did have our representative candidates there.
Sure.
Yeah, the David's tree that was actual debate format. The other was answering the same question posed by audience. So entertaining.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
Oh,
Yeah. You don't have to say any more, Jack.
yeah.
Okay, closing public comment. Does anybody wish to say anything this morning? Address?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.